Good morning. Today we're going to be talking to Cynthia Cheng Mintz from What's the Different podcast about her experiences of surrogacy and pathway to motherhood. Welcome, Cynthia.
Hi.
Hi, Cynthia. Good morning. How are you? Oh, well, it's your evening, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, sorry. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Yeah, really nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Yes, I've seen you lots on podcasts. So, yeah, it's nice to be talking to you in person, which is wonderful.
Okay, so how do we start? How are we starting?
Yeah. All right. So you're happy with me recording, of course?
Yes,
Yep.
that's perfect. I'm used to it.
Yep. I'm sure you
Yeah,
are.
I'm on Instagram all the time. Like I post photos of me, of everybody all the time. So or me and my son and food in general and things like that.
Yep. Great. Okay. So firstly, I'd like to welcome you, Cynthia, to talking with me today from Disability Maternity Care. I appreciate the time that you've taken to speak to us. So can you tell us a little about yourself first?
Well, my name is Cynthia Cheng Mintz. I'm from Toronto, Ontario, Canada. I'm 41. I have neurofibromatosis, which is a genetic condition causing lumps to appear on various parts of my body. Usually it is passed on, but for me, it was a spontaneous situation.
Mhm.
And I also have epilepsy. And I was diagnosed with epilepsy when I was 6 years old. My seizures are very well under control. But the neurofibromatosis situation, they really weren't sure until I was in an adult when I got an official diagnosis. They were kind of sure they had an idea by the time I was a teenager, but I wasn't really confirmed until I was an adult.
Okay, so was that difficult? Did that create any difficulties for you? Not
Pardon
getting the
me?
diagnosis till later?
It wasn't very stressful for me. I just lived life the way, teenagers did and girls in their early 20s did. I went to university. I stayed in residence. I lived on campus. I even went away to school for a semester it was actually for a spring summer semester between my third and fourth year of university. And that was
Right.
a lot of fun. I was in the UK. My university has a campus in East Sussex, and so I stayed there for 2 months, and that included a trip to France and to Belgium, and it was a lot of fun. And I loved being. It was like the first time I was away from Canada, from like away on my own for an extended period of time.
Yeah. And you were with other students that you knew, or was it a totally new
I didn't
situation?
really know the other kids, the other students. They were from various other majors at Queen's, where I went to university, as well as other universities.
Yeah. So can you tell us, does your diagnosis affect your life in particular ways? Does it present particular challenges for you?
Not really, actually. I I'm probably consider myself able-bodied
Yeah.
and quote unquote not sick most of the time. Um, I mean, having epilepsy actually makes me a little bit nervous to drive. I have a driver's license, but I don't drive with my son in the car. It just makes me a little bit nervous. So getting around places, I do when I'm with him, I do have to rely on somebody else to take me. Um, and thank goodness I live downtown and in a very pedestrian friendly area. So even now with COVID restrictions, I can walk to a lot of places, buy groceries. I'm buying most of my groceries online and getting it delivered anyway.
As I'm
Um,
sure lots of other people are too, aren't
yeah,
they?
yeah. It's
Yeah.
just very easy for me. I mean, if I lived in the suburbs, I don't know. I'll probably have a very different answer.
Yeah. But I guess things are much more handy and closer, aren't they, in kind of
Yes, where
the
I am right now.
metropolitan,
Yes.
large city? Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, yeah. So generally, you feel that your diagnosis doesn't create too
Doesn't
many
really
challenges in
affect
life
me.
for
No,
you?
no. I mean, as a mom, I'm sure if I'm privileged to have a lot of help. Um, my mother live and my parents live in the same building as we do, and we also have a nanny to help us. So my son and I and everything is fine. I mean, if I didn't have the financial situation I have right now, again, I will probably give you a different answer.
Yeah, yeah. So having your family support plus having a nanny to assist you has made it a lot easier in your
Yeah, it's
mothering
made everything
role.
a lot easier for me. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So Cynthia, can I come back to the when you were thinking about becoming a mum, did you see any particular challenges for yourself before you became a mother?
Well, I was told that I was not to have children when I was 15.
And
That
why
was
was
when
that?
they suspected it was some sort of genetic condition, and they didn't think it was good. It wouldn't be great for me to pass on whatever condition I had. They thought I had at that time, or they were already hinting at NF, neurofibromatosis,
Hmm.
to kids, and I actually cried. I bawled at the doctor's office at that time. On that day, I still remember. I was 15, around 15 years old.
So
And I
becoming a parent was a part of what you foresaw for yourself for the future then?
Yeah, I mean, you're a 15-year-old girl. You automatically assume you're going to be a mom.
Yeah,
For most girls anyway. And my mom kept on telling me, my mom was with me at the time, you can always adopt, you can always adopt. That's actually one of the worst things to tell somebody. And I mean, I finally accepted that adoption was probably the route we were going to go to head towards.
hmm,
And after I got married, I started researching adoption possibilities. But a lot of countries actually bar people with my condition from adopting.
right, yeah. So
Um,
can I just ask, how long ago did you get married?
10 years ago.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. And, so we did a lot of research. We considered also considered domestic adoption,
Hmm.
and that didn't work out because in within domestic adoption or adopting from the U.S., the for private anyway, the birth parents pick you.
Right, okay.
So they look at your profile. You submit a profile to an agency or a lawyer or whatnot, and they pick you. And I guess, and they're first of all, not a lot of women place their children up for adoption anymore.
I think yeah, that's a
That's
difficulty in
everywhere.
many
That's
countries, isn't
yeah.
it? Yeah.
And I don't. I'm wondering. I think our living situation being downtown probably doesn't make us a top priority for them. Not to mention being interethnic and interfaith. I was baptized Roman Catholic, educated in an Anglican girls' school, and my
Hmm.
husband is Jewish, Eastern
Right.
European heritage, and I'm Chinese. So
So there's lots of factors kind of coming into
yeah,
the mix, aren't there, in making that decision for somebody else, I guess, around agreeing to adoption, aren't there?
yeah. I mean, they're never going to tell you that, but it's up to the birth parents, right? So they look at your
Mm.
profile, and you maybe to them you're not their quote unquote ideal. So with international, we looked basically at East Asian countries, and almost every single one of them would not let people with my health condition with epilepsy adopt.
Right.
Two of the countries, Vietnam and the Philippines, so we looked at East Asian countries and Southeast Asian countries, we considered. but the Philippines requires, at least at the time we were looking to adopt, I'm not too sure what the situation is now, a letter from your priest, stating that you have attended services for a year at least at that church.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And I'm not exactly religious anymore. I don't go to church. And I really think being interfaith kind of puts us off on like not the ideal list for some places. I mean, like, they're never going to tell you that, but this is sort of my theory.
Mm-hmm.
For Vietnam, the kids who are available for adoption are special needs. You can cite the special needs that you're open to, but our list was not exactly for kids with very high needs. So matching was probably low, and we were proposed a child whose needs were not something that we were able to manage or we were ready to manage.
Yeah.
So, but we still stayed with the list, hoping that another kid would come up, until I read an article on surrogacy in the local newspaper.
Yeah. So how many, what sort of length of time had you already been sort of pursuing the adoption pathway
By
before you got to
then,
that?
I would say about 3.5
Yeah, so
years.
that's quite a considerable time, isn't it, to
Yeah,
explore all
yeah.
those options? Yeah.
When we started
So,
researching or taking our course on adoption, which was required in Ontario, and to signing with adoption agencies, that I think, yeah, it would have been about 3.5 years.
yeah, okay.
Yeah. And that's when we started looking into the process of surrogacy in Ontario and in Canada. And in Canada, you cannot pay surrogates. It's
Mm-hmm.
purely altruistic. So you reimburse them for any expenses such as lost wages, groceries, medical expenses not covered by provincial health care, and so
That's not
forth.
unlike Australia, really. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, so when we started, the we were only looking for gestational surrogates. So that means it is not her. So that means the baby she's carrying is not genetically related to her.
Mm-hmm.
And so the first thing I did also was to contact fertility clinics and ask them what options were available for intended parents who are looking to surrogacy. Uh, I mean, at first we were just going to say an egg donor and my husband's sperm,
Mm-hmm.
because that's sort of the logical way.
Yeah, for your
But
own medical condition. Yeah.
yes, for me, yes. But I was told when we met with fertility clinics, very, very few women of East Asian heritage donate eggs.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it is cultural, as you have to remember the vast majority of women of East Asian heritage in Canada um, are no more than one generation off the plane. So children of immigrants, like their parents are from abroad, or
Yeah.
maybe two generations, like maybe the grandparents are the immigrants
So there's still quite a few traditional values that are adhered
that are
to for
still there, no matter
influence
how
lives. Yeah.
Western acculturated one is. It usually takes 3-4 generations to fully integrate.
Mm, mm.
So, yes, and again, just like surrogacy, you can't pay egg donors in Canada. But we are allowed to buy eggs from the States. So I looked into that as well, but budget. So what we ended up doing was using a donor embryo.
Right. Yeah.
And there were a lot more options that way because the clinic will have a lot of embryos available, a lot of parents who went through the in vitro fertilization, IVF process, they will have other embryos that they no longer need. So they will donate it to the clinic and say that we can, any couple or any individual who would like to have a baby cannot do it genetically, cannot carry their own, using their own genes, can, have the
Have
embryos,
access. Yeah.
have
Yeah.
access to the embryos. Yeah.
Yeah.
So for us, we were the first set of embryos. We had to go through two, actually. The first set of embryos were I would say, complete cultural match. So the embryos were half Chinese and half Eastern European Jewish heritage.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Um, yes, so we got those embryos, and
That would
then
have been quite tricky to find an embryo with that heritage as well.
actually no, a lot of like I think almost I would say at least half, more than half of people who are mixed, like who are in an interethnic marriage, Chinese and non-Chinese, are Chinese and Jewish. It's a very common mix in North America.
Oh,
At
that's
least
interesting, isn't it? Yes.
I think a lot of it is shared cultural values,
Mm-hmm.
and it just happened that way, kind of a thing. So we thought, oh yes, we scored 100%. Now we just need to find a surrogate. So we found a surrogate. It took us about, from the time we were matched with an embryo to finding a surrogate, about 5 or 6 months.
So how did you find your surrogate mother?
So we used a consultancy.
Mm-hmm.
Some people will only mean technically an agency, but
Yeah.
the official term is consultancy. And we found her there. So she had to go run through a bunch of medical tests to ensure that she qualifies, and then off we went. And she had to go through all the hormonal stuff, and we had our first transfer in July. That led to a chemical pregnancy, which is basically a very early miscarriage.
Mm-hmm.
And so we tried again in October. That didn't even stick. Like, she didn't even have a positive pregnancy test. We tried again around Christmas, and this time it was a double transfer.
Mm-hmm.
Again, didn't stick. So we thought, hey, maybe these embryos just aren't working. Should we consider another set? So we spoke with the clinic again, and we were matched with a set of embryos, which became my son. One of them, anyway. And this one is a mix of Chinese and what the clinic termed as Eastern Canadian, which is basically Scottish Irish heritage. And I believe she also has some French and Indigenous.
Yeah. So it's really quite a complex process, isn't it? When you
Yeah, it
go down the
is. It
pathway of
is.
surrogacy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Normally, like the normal path from surrogacy would either be would be for something for someone with a condition like mine, would be a donor egg and her husband's sperm,
Mm-hmm.
but or her male partner's sperm, but that was not possible. I guess I wouldn't say not possible, but it would have been a lot more complicated and more expensive.
And probably it would have taken more time to find a suitable egg
Yeah,
donor.
yeah,
Yeah.
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 I mean, yeah, because we actually almost did. I mean, like, but she was from another part of the country, and which meant that we would have to fly her here, and again, budget.
Yeah, yeah. And that would have made it perhaps more difficult to perhaps participating in the pregnancy care, etc. Like, can you tell us a little bit about once the surrogate mother actually became pregnant, then did you participate in her antenatal visits, or did you only sort of?
I mean, we chatted online, and like she gave me, like, you know, the rundown of when she was going, what, like how her doctor's appointments were, but she lived about 2 hours away.
Uh-huh.
So it's not like we could actually go to the clinic
Right,
visits.
okay, yeah.
We did go for her 20-week scan, because that is a big anatomy scan.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we did go for that.
And how
And
was
of
that
course,
for you and your
yeah, and
partner?
we planned to be there for the delivery. And this is pre-COVID, so
Yes, that's
we,
right.
you know, it wasn't like you were restricted to one person in the delivery room with you. But had some complications, and delivered emergency C-section at 35 weeks and 1 day. So
Ah,
her husband
okay.
texted me and said, "Well, we're doing the C-section now. Please come over." Well, it
Yeah.
takes 2 hours, right? And a C-section is relatively fast. So he was already born when we got to the hospital.
So he was an hour or two old, was he, by the time you got there?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, more like two.
And
And
I guess that's
at
the
35.
difficulty, isn't it? Pregnancy and birth are always a little bit unpredictable. You don't always
Mm-hmm.
know what's going to
Yeah.
happen or what complications there might be. Yeah.
I mean, if this was a normal delivery, and, you know, I would have just had received the message when she went into labor, and we
Yeah.
would just taken our time.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he was a very sizable kid for a 35 weeker. Like, he was over, like, a little bit over 6 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
But because he had trouble eating and taking a bottle, he was in the hospital for 11 days.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's quite good, really, for a baby born at just over 35 weeks.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. So he obviously did very well then.
He did very well.
Yeah. And how old is he now,
He's
Cynthia?
two. He's
Two.
two. He turned two about 2 weeks ago. His birthday is mid-October, so October 15th. So.
Oh, lovely. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so, how were the early days as a mum? So, can you just describe sort of what happened in the hospital? So then he came home with you, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe talk a little bit about those sort of early postnatal days for you.
Well, we had a nighttime overnight nanny take care of him while we were sleeping. Because for someone with epilepsy, sleep is really, really important to
Mm.
reduce stress.
Yeah,
So she took care of all the feedings and diaper changes at night. And then during the day, it was between me, my husband, and a nanny.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, is that the main reason that you decided to have a nanny? Was because of the need to have someone there at night when you
Yeah, and
sleep?
just in case, like, I got really tired or whatnot. And I mean, the night nanny was definitely so I would be able to sleep. I mean, I come across as very privileged, and this is not, and I'm sorry about that, but this is not the situation for, like, most people who have my health condition. So, I mean, I am just saying that, and I am, letting people know that my situation is a little bit, I guess, different, and I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, yeah. But I guess for somebody with the same diagnosis as yourself or a similar diagnosis in terms of making the decision about whether to
Mhm.
to actually progress with a pregnancy, and the possibility of your child having a genetic disorder, or whether to look at adoption or whether to look at surrogacy, I think the issues are going to be the same, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, for when I was, I mean, like what I could have easily have frozen my eggs, and when I was a little bit younger, and then I would be able to have kids who were genetically related to me and my husband. But I did not. I was discouraged from doing that by my parents, and I don't know if it's cultural or if they just didn't want me to stress my body by putting hormones in to produce eggs. And obviously, back in the 90s, the doctor wouldn't have said you can only do IVF because technology wasn't as good in 1994
Mm, mm.
as it is now.
So I guess given I guess the technological advances that occurred between the time that you were 15 and the time that you became married and decided to have a family, there wasn't sort of the option then for using your own eggs at that point in time.
I could have done it then too, but I think I was just focused so strictly on adoption that
Right. Yeah.
I just thought, hey, don't bother.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's reasonable, and I think everybody's different, aren't they? And I guess what you
Mm-hmm.
need to consider is very much an individual approach, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So
So, yeah.
go ahead. Sorry.
No, no, no. I was just going to say, so if you had any advice for other women who might be considering motherhood through surrogacy, what would that advice be? Perhaps if someone to ask you.
Well, you've got to plan your budget. You've got to, look at all the options available for you. Is for example, if you were looking to have a child who is of a very similar ethnic background as yourself, donor eggs might not be possible if you don't already have your eggs frozen, and to just accept all options, have an open mind. And in the whole process itself can be very stressful because you like anybody else attempting to either get pregnant themselves or whatnot, that you have to, like you have to things happen. Like you have to, it doesn't always work like it took
That's right. As
five.
you said, you'd already had several attempts
Mm-hmm.
at pregnancy with a surrogate mother that didn't work. And I guess, like any woman going through an IVF pregnancy herself, I mean, you build up those expectations, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
And hopes. And
Mm-hmm.
then for that not to happen can be quite emotionally distressing at times, I imagine.
Yeah, and it's sometimes also very, because you're not pregnant, and when you're shopping for the baby before the baby's born, or if you are looking to looking to build your registry at a store, people look at you funny, and they're like, "You're not pregnant," or because they sometimes they assume you're shopping for a friend.
Mm-hmm. Do they
And
have people actually said things to you, or?
I was very worried about it. Like nobody really did. And as for, like people, and but like they, as with adoption, a lot of times you don't know how people will treat you. Like will your best friend still throw you a shower? Because they, like, in general, people don't know how to react to adoptions and to surrogacy.
Mm. So, what sort of reactions did you get from either friends or close family or the extended
They
family?
were, to me, like to my face, they were accepting,
Mm-hmm.
and they were happy that we were expecting a baby. no matter how. But often you don't know how they think themselves. Like, what are they saying to each other?
Right. Yeah.
Kind of.
Did you ever get a feeling that, I guess, that they might have not been happy or accepting?
I don't know about friends, but definitely family. And I think it's cultural.
That they weren't so accepting of your pathway through
Yeah, yeah,
surrogacy to motherhood.
yeah, yeah.
And has that, in the meantime, with your little boy now being 2, has that changed? Have they come to terms with that, do you think?
Well, I was thinking it's really mostly the family in Hong Kong, and I haven't seen them in a long time, like years.
So they're quite extended, really, aren't they? And they're
Yeah,
still
they
being
are.
at the
They
same
are.
time. Yeah.
My cousins who live in Canada have been accepting, at least to us.
Mm-hmm.
So
Which is the important part of the family, isn't
yeah,
it? The family
yeah.
that are around you, providing that
Hmm.
sort of support.
Hmm.
Yeah, and it sounds like your parents are very supportive as well, given that they live very close to you.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like right now, it's a little bit stressful for us because, well, COVID, and B, I'm started looking at preschools for him.
Yeah.
And sometimes for some of them, the application process is complicated or really long, and you have to apply so many months in advance just to get on a waiting list. Some have admissions requirements,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
which require an interview. He's a little bit slow in the language development for his age,
Mm-hmm.
but he's met his milestones for everything else. Like he's almost pretty much caught up to an average 2-year-old, which I'm really, really happy about.
Yeah, I'm sure you are.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you and your husband discuss talking to your son about, his coming into being and becoming part of your family? What are your
Yeah,
plans
we're
around
we're
that?
we we're looking at books, but there's very, very little that is specific to our situation. Like I can find tons of embryo donate, a few books on embryo donation, a few books on surrogacy, but usually embryo donation books are stories about the mom actually carrying the embryo herself.
Yeah, yeah,
And the surrogacy stories usually go the typical route of same genetic, like being genetic related to the child's parents, but baby being carried by another person.
yeah, yeah,
Or their surrogacy stories for kids whose parents are same-sex couples.
yeah. Well, maybe that's an avenue you might need to
Maybe,
pursue.
but it's so unique that
That's
I
right.
don't think it's very common at all.
No, but perhaps, in the future it will become
Mm-hmm.
more common.
Mm-hmm.
And I think particularly as we sort of look into the future, particularly with inclusion with people with disabilities and the opportunity for them to become parents, then there is going to be a lot more options and
Yeah.
availability for them to pursue, and perhaps different pathways to surrogacy and
Yeah.
choosing a similar
Typically,
path
though,
to
people
yourself.
in with my condition would have an egg donor
Yeah,
in their husband's sperm, so not rather than a donated embryo. It's very unique, and a part of it is a cultural thing, and that kind of a situation. So
yeah, yeah. So before we finish, Cynthia, it's been wonderful talking to you. Is there anything else that you'd like to share about your journey to parenthood?
um, it's very different for everyone. So it can be a little bit difficult to specifically say. It's just my advice is just to be patient and explore all options.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for talking to us today. I think it's wonderful for listeners to be able to listen to different experiences, because it's through listening to other people's experiences that actually helps us to realise our own perspective, and perhaps to increase that perspective, you know, in terms of choices for pregnancy, choices for motherhood.
Yes, that's right. And hopefully in the future, more women of all different types of ethnic backgrounds will become more comfortable donating eggs and not have the cultural influence from their elders.
Yeah, hopefully. Might
Hopefully.
take a bit of time. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
As they become
yeah, because like,
acculturated, as you said.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because it's usually, I mean, this is when I mean donating their eggs, it's more donating to strangers than to family. Like, and people from my ethnic background would probably not have any issues donating to a cousin or a sister or something like that. And
Yeah,
that kind
but
of,
to an unknown person.
yeah, from a known person or their best friend.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Any other last comments you'd like to add before we finish today,
I
Cynthia?
think we're good.
Okay, well, thank you so much for your time.
No problem. Have a great day.
Thank you.